Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Vice President and Principal Analyst from Constellation Research, Steve Wilson.
Oh, you did it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
To set the scene, we're going to take you back to your college days. And I don't mean preparing for tonight's dinner, but rather we're going to spend the next 3 hours, right, talking ethics. Now, we thought very quickly, this is as much as we prepared. We thought ethics could either be the ethics of technologists or it could be the ethics of the technology, if that's even a thing. But we're going to leave it up to the panellists to spend a couple of minutes each telling us what they think the most pressing ethical thing is that we should take into dinner tonight. Kate.
Digital ethics, for me, is really comes down to just because we can, ought we? We have great power now with our computing technology, AI, virtual reality, augmented reality, all of this stuff, and we can do so much, but the real question is, should we?
Great point.
And do we want to? And we need to think about it now before we go too far down the path, because once we're down it, we're kind of done.
There are whole business models in the digital economy that are based on what we can do without going to what we ought to do. John.
Yeah, I'm conflicted by two thoughts that I've had for a long time that are not even related to AI ethics, and certainly not AI ethics in 2050. The first is, if you program computers to do good, will they do well, or can they do well? And in human world, that happens. And I think that's one of the big questions that we have to ask. The other one is, should ethics mimic, AI ethics, mimic human behavior or set a new standard for it?
As if we are always ethical. Yeah. Now, which Ray Wang have we got? Is it the ethical one or the...
It's the evil twin.
The one with the goatee is the one you have to look out for.
Our Wang too. No. I think for me, right, the thing I'm really battling for, and if I ever do a TED Talk, it's really around the international human right to privacy. And privacy, and not just the analog version, but the digital one. And I think what we're doing is we are giving away too much information without understanding the value exchange for that information and without understanding the permission for that value exchange. And that's driving me nuts.
So I'll try to synthesize what I've heard so far and say there's really three things I think about with digital ethics. First is sort of building what Ray said. How can you be put in a position of choice associated with your information and data as opposed to having those choices made for you without you knowing? And in a way that is understandable and you're not having to click through 40 pages of who knows what. So maybe it's a natural language conversation where the machine says, do you want to share your data with Google? And you say no, and it says, would you be willing to share your data with Google in the event of a car accident? Maybe you say yes, maybe you say no. If it says, would you be willing to share your data if your heart rate drops below 40 beats a minute? Different conversation, different context. So that's the first thing. Second thing, I think sort of building on that, I would hope we get to a world in which we take, because philosophers have tried to figure out ethics, and the reality is very little common ground except for the basic principle of do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Challenge is, of course, we all have different preferences. Some people are psychopaths. It doesn't really apply well for the world we're in. So maybe what I would say is do unto others as they would permit you to do unto them. And you'd be able to express your preferences. And then the last thing I know real quick, while we're talking about digital ethics, I think we're going to be in a world increasing where individuals are super empowered not only to do digital things, but also do bio things. I've already seen for less than $1 million, you can sequence E. coli from scratch, which is mainly for personalized medicine, but we need to recognize personalized medicine is also going to be personalized poison. And so eventually you're going to need to have at your own individual level some way of expressing those things both digitally as well as physically you want to be exposed to versus you don't want to be exposed to, and have some sort of resilient defense to the things you don't want to be exposed to.
So most of you have implicitly or explicitly stated some philosophical problems as you framed the thing. And anybody that's done philosophy for more than 5 minutes knows that there is alternative schools of thought. And over 3,000 years, we've established several schools of thought over which reasonable people disagree. So this is an unsolved problem about whether there is a sensible school of thought. Utilitarianism is the one that keeps coming up in AI. The trolley problem. Should we sacrifice the the trolley or the... And in fact, the people at Mercedes-Benz have actually instantiated the trolley problem for us already a couple of weeks ago when they said that they're going to program the car to prefer the safety of the driver over the safety of the people in public. So that's a thought experiment. And I don't want to debate that. We don't have time for that. But we do have time to talk about whether or not utilitarianism is even a sensible way. Is there a philosophy that we all agree on? I think David's nailed it with do unto others, but Kate, do you think that we can agree on just the bedrock?
Actually, building on something that John was saying, right? Do we build the best of what we believe humanity could be and replicate that, or do we go to straight, self-interest value exchange, right? I think that's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay, self-interest value exchange and get that and say which one's out, or maybe we have a diversity of that running around. Back to your point. I mean, you just said that. There are different schools of thought.
And you could have AIs that are competing in a sense, in a contest of ideas sense.
We could just let the free market decide. No, I mean, utilitarianism is complicated because
free market ethics.
Free market ethics, let
Open
the market
source.
decide.
First time you've heard it here.
That
Free market
never
ethics.
leads to any problems whatsoever.
Well, the thing is that even with our best intentions, there will be unintended consequences.
Yes.
Even if we choose utilitarianism, which there are problems, and not everyone agrees. Just look at privacy. Look at the EU, Australia, New Zealand, and the US positions on privacy. They're radically different, and they're radically from different perspectives. And they're very hard to reconcile, especially the US and the EU perspectives on privacy.
It's actually US and the rest of the world now.
Well, actually,
Over 100 countries.
while we're talking about EU and US, we also need to talk about China. So how many people know about Sesame Social Credit?
No, what is that?
All right, so
30
Sesame
seconds.
Social Credit is actually, you can look it up right now, it's live in China. Basically, anyone in China will get a daily web score based on their web postings. If they post good things about the party, they buy from Alibaba, their score goes up. They post bad things about the party, they don't buy from Chinese firms, their score goes down. It's a little bit more insidious though because it knows your social network. And based on the people in your social network, if you hang out with people with higher social credit scores, they say they'll bring your scores up. You hang out with people with lower social credit scores, it brings your score down, and there are rewards. You'll get faster internet as your score goes up, means you get slower internet if your score goes down. You can't check into a certain hotel if your score goes down. You can't apply for certain jobs if your score goes down. So it's basically gamification of obedience to the state.
Well, it's also the command economy goes digital, right? It's the digital command economy.
Yeah,
And
but how is that even different to Uber drivers scoring us and us scoring them and your FICO score and all of this stuff?
Well, so
you've got the
because
capitalist
there's
version
no
and the
gamification
communist.
of it. So your Uber score does not say if you drive in a car with higher social
I
scores
bet
in it.
there's a startup out there that's going to take that.
Well, but I think that's it, is that in the past, repressive regimes have been collapsed because eventually people were upset at the repressive regime. This actually takes away, and the regime says, I'm not telling you to do anything other than here are rewards, here are other penalties, your choice as to your behavior, and you actually get the peers to do it. And so that is actually what makes it quite brilliant, and the fact that it's going to be mandatory for everyone in China by 2020. What is our response as a Western society that actually values individual freedoms to that?
Well,
So look,
what's our response to Oral Roberts University and the Fitbits for all students?
Like the nice thing, but there's these, you have choice. You can move to another university and things like
Admittedly.
that. This removes, so I think
Hobson's
the difference
choice
is from
once
us.
you've already spent $100,000 on first year.
But I think that's the thing is, I personally think that the question we will need to ask by 2050 is, do we still have an element of human choice, or has that been taken away for us?
Can we protect choice? And can we protect choice in a digital world that's biased against your choice?
Right.
I think that's what you're saying.
And I think so. I think and when we talked about utilitarianism, we should at least put out two other schools of thought, which is there's the Kant school of thought, which is basically duty, and so one could actually say, what is the duty of an AI to do things?
Well, you talked
then
about
there's
public
the
service as an alternative to government, which I think is a good phrase.
Possibly. And then there's also Rawlsian, which says the trouble with utilitarianism is it's great for 95%, but you
Yes.
could actually do indentured servitude or slavehood for 1%, and utilitarianism would say that's great. And so what Rawls is saying is there will always be disparity, but pick the circumstance in which the disparities are
Rawls
minimized.
tries to optimize the benefits over the disparity of a few,
Exactly.
which is another model. And then the few have to figure out if that trade-off is worth it being in that category because of the way we segmented that. So
Exactly.
So we're going really well. John and I were sure that we could solve ethics in 20 minutes, and we're almost there, right?
I do it by keeping quiet.
Well, if you remove all the humans, you solved it.
Right, you got to get rid of the humans for digital
You're
ethics.
bursting to solve this problem for
Is,
us, John.
and this is the kind of future that I was sort of alluding to, is if we empower machines where we have the Internet of Things and devices talking to each other, making decisions without us, increasingly we're taken out of running our own lives and even knowing that we have choice, because the gamification and the direction of us, the nudging of us by devices will start to happen. And it'll happen through commercially sensible ends, but the end result will be the same as China, but for different reasons.
Well,
With
and
the
I
left
think
wing and the right wing actually meet around the back again.
the other question that I think is worth asking too is,
That happens in 12 days. But
I think the question is,
are we employed?
should we even have a choice? I mean, what is going to be so
are
important
we
about
allowed to
choice?
make choices? Is
Well, like, if you just ask anybody here, like, what the choices that other people made in their business or somewhere, almost everyone will say, no, that was a bad choice. So that just by the numbers, you'll have so much more negativity toward the choice. So they'll say, let's abstract that. Let's get rid of the choice. And then the algorithm will be more like utilitarian.
Well, we have this crazy thing with smart contracts at the moment. There's a new movement called the code is law. And in terms of bad choices, they said that the choice is whatever the smart contract does, that's it. And there's no concept of putting a value on whether it was a good choice or bad choice. I think it's completely nuts.
But it's the ultimate codification. It's like
Yeah.
the Code Napoleon writ large, and it takes the common law out of the whole proceedings, and it's really quite a fundamental shift for the West that's not civil code in the legislative
Yeah.
approach.
But are we really advocating for a future in which we've removed human choice?
Where people...
We've removed human choice. I mean, I have to just pause and say, I think a fundamental thing that makes us human versus, quite frankly, animals, is that we do have choice. We make bad choices, we live with the consequences, and maybe the AI can say, look, I know you made that choice, but let me just show you the consequences of you doing that path, and it can help you make better choices.
And that, of course, is a philosophy which is contested about whether there is free will.
Oh, and whether or not consciousness is illusion, but we're not going to do that because we only got 4 more minutes left.
but let me rephrase your question. I think it's not a question of choice. I think it's how much complexity versus simplicity we want to balance. Do we want to automate some of the complex pieces and simplify the choices? And do I know that in my own free will to make that choice?
Right.
And I think that might be what you're saying.
And I think it's a resostat, because some people may want to choose to live off the grid and everything like that, and other people are like, you know what, I enjoy this.
But see, for example, I don't want, and this is going to sound really bad, I'm going to get crushed on this one, but I don't believe in digital currencies. And I say this because as soon as you get rid of cash, we lose our full anonymity. And so for me, I don't ever want to be punished for paying in cash in the future, right? But that's a choice. But I want to ensure that there's an environment that actually allows me, even though it is more inefficient, it could lead to AML, people could be using this to trade. I value that anonymity.
Well, the thing is, I did a project a long time ago for a bank, an American bank, and they wanted to know how they could make money out of their branches and turn them into profit centres. And the solution we came up with was to digitise cash, because you can clip a ticket on the way through. And I'm really sorry. I feel bad about it, but that's kind of what's happening. And in Australia, we've got the touch, the tap and go cards and stuff, and pretty much nobody in the city is carrying cash anymore.
But see, that's a choice. It's not been forced upon you, because
but
you can still choose to do cash. There may be a cost associated with the transaction cost.
Yes, but the banks will eventually get rid of cash, because cash is a cost
Or
to a
there
bank.
may be a reaction. If every generation is a reaction to the one that came before it, it could very well be that the current generation that loves technology, the next generation may actually reject it and say, look, it hasn't made our lives
That
better.
hasn't happened yet.
But it could happen.
I want to
Gen Z
throw in one more point, because if there's anything that's obvious, we're going to raise more questions than we're going to have answers to. I want to throw in one technical point. It doesn't come from philosophy, but it comes from computer science. In first year computer science, they teach us the halting problem, which is that there is no way that you can program a computer to tell that another computer is ever going to stop. It's kind of arcane. The travelling salesman problem is less arcane, fairly well known. There's no algorithm for working out the shortest point between 2 towns to cover every town. There's no algorithm to do that. It's mathematically proven, known it for 1,000 years. I think that it's unethical for computer scientists and for technologists to pretend that we can have algorithms for driving a car, or we can have algorithms for making choices about healthcare. If we can't even program a computer to solve the travelling salesman problem, it's incredible hubris, and I think it's unethical for technologists to go launching into things like self-driving cars and to even speculate about whether the car should mow down the pedestrian or to even speculate that, because that problem is probably unsolvable.
Well, so I would push back and say, if you would ask someone, could we get to the moon, and you were asking this in 1910, you'd say, we can't get there. Now, granted, the moon is a fixed target and everything like that, but we don't know if quantum computing may allow us to do things in parallel, and then the things that were non-polynomial are now successful. I think what makes us human is the ability to reach for the things that are currently not obtainable in our era. That said, I fully agree with you. I've seen lots of debates right now where people are talking about AI and they don't quite even understand how AI works.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the greatest disservice, is actually we need to have something that actually gets to education as to how AI really works, and so that you're not being informed by ethics by what the cinema shows about AI, but actually
Look,
how it operates.
Kate comes from a place that the University of New South Wales has one of the world's best quantum computing programs. So all we need to do is to add ethics to the research agenda of quantum computing, and we'll have something to shoot for. Hey, I want to thank everybody. That was, I found it stimulating.
Can I just toss out one thing real quick while we have 6 seconds, 5 seconds?
4 seconds.
The question is whether or not work is something that we fundamentally humans need to do. Biology has actually shown that in terms of public health, if you're not employed, your health actually goes down. And so the question is, if we live in a world in which things are increasingly going to be automated, is that actually something where we're actually destroying human health because we've taken away your job?
Yet another ethical conundrum.
And that's the question we need to ask way before 2050. I just want to put that out there.
Thanks for leaving on a question.
Please join me. That was great. Thanks, folks.
Thanks.
At very short notice, it was really good. Thank you.